Nick Wakeling is the Shadow Opposition spokesman for Industrial Relations and Workplace Safety. And yesterday he's moved to initiate an investigation into Victoria's failed hotel quarantine program. So Workplace Safety announced that it would commence filing charges against the Department of Health and Human Services, with 58 workplace health and safety breaches over Victoria's first hotel quarantine battle. Welcome, Nick.
G'day, great to be here.
Now, Nick, you must be feeling a sense of vindication with Workplace Safety initiating the 58 charges?
Well, for 15 months, we've been pushing WorkSafe to do their job, which was to investigate what's been the state's worst health and safety disaster. As many in the state know, it led to the death of upwards of 800 people, shut the state for months, businesses were closed, families suffered, and it's imperative that those who are responsible are held to account.
How confident are you, given the Coates inquiry and the collective amnesia that descended upon everybody, how confident are you that those that are responsible will actually be held to account?
Well, this is what Victorians are expecting. I mean, if a business in the state of Victoria caused the death of 800 people, those responsible, those who sat around the boardroom table that made the decisions, would not only have been investigated, but they would have been charged, and those directors would probably already be in jail. Now, we know that the WorkSafe is proposing to lay charges against the department. As yet, we're not seeing any evidence that they're going to actually be laying charges against individuals, particularly ministers who made these decisions. I mean, we don't want a dual track system where if you're a private operator, you know you're going to face the full force of the law. But if you're a government department, then you're going to end up paying a fine, which the taxpayer is going to pick up at the end. And more importantly, those who made the decisions around a cabinet table are going to get off scot-free. It's not good enough. People deserve better.
Now, we seem to constantly see the Andrews government and Sutton involved in various alleged scandals between the iCook Foods, the failed hotel quarantine scheme, and again, there doesn't seem to be any heads on pikes. There's no one held to account. No one stood down while the investigation continues. What's going to change with this?
Well, the difference with this is that this is actually going to be a court case. For the first time, we're actually going to be seeing the actions of a government actually being determined within a court. But it's imperative that those who were responsible for this failure are actually put in the dock. What we don't want to see is a whitewash where, mid-level bureaucrats are going to be dealt with and a fine handed out to the government. And those who ultimately made the decision, who sat around a cabinet table and set up hotel quarantine without the necessary health and safety checks and balances in place, get off scot-free. I mean, how perverse are you going to have a situation with a potential $90 million fine handed out to a government department, and the Victorian Treasury writes out the cheque for them and the money gets handed straight back to the government. The only people who win out of that are the lawyers, and no one is held accountable. It's certainly not good enough. Victorians expect those guilty of committing offences are actually held in the dock. Let's also remember this government championed new laws regarding industrial manslaughter, which said if a business was responsible for the death through their negligence of any person, that person could potentially face upwards of 25 years in jail as a manslaughter offence. 800 people have died, biggest death in a workplace incident in Victoria's history, and you could have the perverse outcome when nobody faces any charges in regards to those deaths.
It's almost an admission of guilt, isn't it, Nick, when they say we can't recall who instigated these contracts, who signed it, who failed in their duty of care to check that the necessary qualifications and training were held by the organisations that they put in place to do this very job.
Well, could you imagine any business in Australia where the directors of those companies told their shareholders, we don't know who around the boardroom table made these decisions. Those people would have already been sacked, and then potentially those directors would already be in the dock if it led to the death of 800 people. This government has collective amnesia when it suits them. It's easy for them to simply say, it wasn't me, look somewhere else, it's all over now. Well, it's not over. 800 people died. State was in a was locked down in the second lockdown for months on end, and rightly, charges are being brought. But more importantly, we need to ensure we get to the bottom of this. Those who are guilty of offences need to be charged and facing the full force of the law.
What about the actual directors of the security companies? Will they face charges under this action as well, Nick?
Well, it appears at this stage, no. We see that action's only been brought in regards to the department. Our view is very simple. There are many players who led to the failure in hotel quarantine, be they from a ministerial premier level sitting around a cabinet table to the department to contractors that are being brought in. I mean, WorkSafe's undertaken a 15-month investigation. They should know explicitly who is at fault from the top to the bottom, and all players who are potentially guilty of committing an offence in regards to health and safety should face the full force of the law. If, as I said, this was a private company, that would already have happened. If contractors were guilty of an offence which led to the death of a Victorian, they would face the consequences. So why is it that hotel quarantine would be any different?
All right, what's next, Nick? What should we look for? What would the next step that you'd like to see happen?
Well, the first thing we want to do is see exactly what the charges are and who in fact is being charged. But secondly, and more importantly, if we identify that there are those who are not going to be dealt with, that those are going to be walking away from this with their hands clean, we will want to be ensuring that pressure is applied to ensure that all those players are also caught up in this important investigation and ensure that charges where appropriate are laid. And secondly, if people are not going to be charged, then it needs to be explained to the Victorian community why charges will not be laid against those people. Victorians want answers, but it also has to be transparent. People want to know why this has happened, and if you were guilty, you'll be charged, and if people aren't being charged, then rightly Victorians need to know an answer to that important question as well.
Transparency and accountability seem to be the minimum standard we should accept from our government, and yet they seem hard to come by at the moment.
It's simply closing your eyes to it and hoping it just goes away is not good enough. Victorians rightly expect transparent government. They're not getting that under this government. It's simply not good enough, and Victorians expect better. And we know that the opposition and other people will continue to apply the blowtorch on this important issue, because at the end of the day, it's about ensuring that the rule of law is upheld, and more importantly, that those who are guilty of an offence are held to account. If it was any of us that caused the death of 800 people, then we would face the full force of the law. This government should be no different.
All right, there you have it. Nick Wakeling, the Shadow Opposition Spokesman for Industrial Relations and Workplace Safety. Thanks for your time, Nick.
Thanks very much.